All right, hello and welcome to another episode of MXDTV. This is a very special episode. I'm very excited. This is episode 16, and I have my first live guest on the show. It's Central Valley poet Sam Pereira. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to play a couple songs, and then I'm going to introduce Sam, and we're going to talk about poetry. I'd like to play a couple songs. This first song is called Golden State, and it refers to, of course, California. I'm getting a triple thumbs up from my executive producer, which means we're okay. All right, thank you, Melanie. This is a song called Golden State. It's off of my first record, and it not only refers to California, but it refers to the Golden State Freeway, which I'm sure Sam knows something about, so that's why I've chosen it. It goes a little bit something like this. Wanna get away, but you fear we've stayed too long by the freeway and the freight train. Needle in your vein, so you keep the curtains drawn. There's been a sea change, your heart rate. It's that speed you're traveling on. What's that sound that keeps you hanging all along by the freeways and the freight trains? That speed traveling on. What's that sound that keeps you hanging all along by the freeways and the freight trains? 'Cause there's been a sea change. There's been a sea change. There's been a sea change in your heart rate. Stayed too long. Stayed too long. Stayed too long. I told myself I wasn't going to do that, and I did it anyway. I didn't mean to get so rambunctious, but that's what happens. So, the Golden State Freeway was notoriously known in my day as Motel Drive, and I lived very close to Motel Drive, and that's where all the junkies were, and that's... when you were a little kid, you'd go by there and you'd think, like, how does anybody end up there? And then I spent a lot of time there. So when I'm talking about wanting to get away, I wanted to get away from that. And when I think about Fresno, I think about that spot specifically quite a bit. And that's why I wanted to play that tonight, because we're going to get deep into the Fresno game tonight. And I wanted to play this song, too, because... just makes me think of the other side of things, being a little bit younger and really having such a great time. And I love Tom Waits, but this song just makes me think of the flip side of my adolescence, or I don't know what you call your teenage years, but my teenage years, my 20s in California. This song reminds me of them. We used to have this saying: when you see the B trucks, the Fresno B trucks out on the street, you've partied for too long. It's because they're delivering the morning paper. And we would often see the Fresno B trucks, because we just would stay up all night. So I thought of this song, and I know Sam has, there's a poem Sam has where he talks a little bit about Tom Waits, but I just wanted to play this one. I thought of it, and Tom did a lot of time in San Diego. I think he's even from there, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. Anyway. Time went so quickly, I went lickety-splitly down to my old 55. I pulled away slowly, feeling so holy, God knows I was feeling alive. Now the sun's coming up, I'm riding with Lady Luck. Freeway cars and trucks, stars beginning to fade, and I leave the parade, just wishing I'd stayed a little longer. Lord knows, oh, let me tell you, the feeling's getting stronger. About 6 in the morning, gave me no warning, and I had to be on my way. Cars are all passing me, the trucks are all flashing me, and I'm on my way home from your place. Now the sun's coming up, I'm riding with Lady Luck. Freeway cars and trucks, stars beginning to fade, and I leave the parade, just wishing I'd stayed a little longer. Lord knows, oh, let me tell you, the feeling's getting stronger. Time went so quickly, I went lickety-splitly down to my old 55. I pulled away slowly, I was feeling so holy, God knows I was feeling alive. Now the sun's coming up, I'm riding with Lady Luck. Freeway cars and trucks, freeway cars and trucks, freeway, freeway, freeway. Oh, right on. Eric Squindo's with us. He says he's watching on the big screen tonight. Jay Fung. Dude, well, coming from you, Mr. Fung, it's very kind. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in, man. And we've also got Jason Albright. Clap, clap. Thanks, man. Well, I have a very special guest tonight. and I'm excited to introduce him. I'm excited to do this, and the gentleman's name is Sam Pereira. He's a Central Valley poet, as I like to refer to him, or as we're talking Fresno, buddy. That's right. We're talking Fresno, and he is what we call one of the Fresno poets, and he rubbed elbows with all the big shots that really shaped guys like myself and Jay Fong, who also rubbed elbows with all the big shots. You know, the influence that all these poets have had on us people, us guys and gals that grew up in the Central Valley is untold. Oh, there, I see Sam's righted himself. I was watching Sam. I see. Okay, I'm just gonna bring him onto the screen. This is Sam Pereira, and that's about all you did is rub elbows. Well, at least you kept your nose clean, so to speak, Jay Fong. I'm going to bring Sam on to the screen here. I think he's ready to go. Are you ready to go, Sam? Give me a hit. Uh-oh, maybe not. I think he was a second ago. I don't see him there. Okay, I'm going to wait a second. Maybe he's not there. No, he's not there. Okay. I'll wait one more second until he gets it right. Yeah, there he is. Are you ready to go, Sam? Oh no, I think I just lost the connection. Well, I'm gonna wait for Sam to come back. So here's what I'll do, and I hope I don't choose a poem that he was gonna read, but I'll read one of Sam's poems while we're waiting for him. And let's see. This is from Sam's book. Oh, here he comes. Okay, good. Let's see. I'm going to just try to bring you on, Sam. How's it going, Sam?
Well, it was going fine, but in the middle of your Tom Waits song, I lost everything. So.
Oh, well, you're back now. I looked down and I could see that your whole screen had gone sideways there for a second. So I was trying to kill. I was trying to kill. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Mr. Sam Pereira. Right now, there's the thunderous applause, Sam. You just can't hear it. So thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited that you're here. Now, this is really exciting for me because I don't know too much about you. In fact, I met you recently. That looks great. I met you recently through the wonders of social media.
Right.
Through Marty Williams, correct? I kind of met you through him. I think he shared one of my poems, and that's I think how I met you. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. Marty and I go back a ways. He co-edited an anthology called How Much Earth, and that's when I first came into contact with Marty. But he's been great over the years.
Mm-hmm. So as I've mentioned to you, and I've mentioned on this show, Marty Williams was my high school English teacher in 10th grade, and he tolerated me and encouraged. He tolerated me and never got me arrested, and encouraged me. And he used to play basketball with us at lunchtime, and he was an outstanding basketball player. So we're hoping to get him on in the future. So I know you know Marty, and you also took class with Larry Levis,
Right.
and David St. John. Is that correct?
Yes.
How about Dwayne Rail? Did you know Dwayne?
Sure did. Dwayne, I don't know if you're aware, just passed away recently.
I am aware because I was trying to get in touch with him. Yeah, he was my City College
Dwayne,
poetry teacher.
At Fresno City College.
Correct. He was my teacher at Fresno City College. Oh, you went sideways again on us, Sam. And I lost your audio. All right, well, I'm gonna do that while he's fixing it. And Sam, while you're trying to fix your phone, I'm gonna read one of your poems. Is that okay? Can I do that? I'll do that. This is a poem called. Oh no, that's not the one I wanted to read. Oh, there, he's back. Okay, let's try again. You're back. Or maybe not. Live this is, well, it's not quite television, but it is live. So this is why I think I recorded my first guest, because I was worried. Oh, I've lost him completely. Okay. Well, we'll wait for him to come back. And while we're doing that, I'm going to read one of Sam's poems. That's what I'll do. And the one I wanted to read. Oh, there he is. Okay. I'm going to give it one. There you are. Sorry, I lost you. Are you having an internet connection situation?
Trying it again.
Yeah. Seems to be working now.
Not hearing me?
I can hear you. And I can see you. Oh, no. Well, doggone it. I was worried this might happen to us. Oh, as soon as I leave you, take you off there, you come. There you are. Can you hear me?
I'm here, but I don't think you're hearing me.
I can hear you. I think you can't hear me is the problem. Let's see.
No?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm back.
Okay. Can you hear me? All right. Doggone it. I'm going to give it one more second here. Darn it. Okay, I really wanted this to work, but I'm really sad that it's not. All right. Well, Sam sent me this book. He sent me 2 books once we became friends. Without even batting an eyelash, he just sent me 2 of his books. This is True North and Untrue You, which I think is a really great title. Let's see what Melanie has to say. Okay, and this one is called A Cafe in Boca. Anyway, Sam's a great poet, and if you follow him on Facebook, he posts a poem like every day, and he posts a poem like every day, and they're fantastic. I'm going to read you this one. It's called During a Time of Sorrow. The day, like the night, was translucent. An old woman's shawl much the same. Let me start over. During a time of sorrow. The day, like the night, was translucent. An old woman's shawl much the same. In winter. This winter. The snow's season when a woman could absolutely count on white landing on that new dress. The one-colored mountain lion she had picked with a vengeance, to a secret applause from the others. It was during this time you decided on a simplicity to scare them all away, to make the day an ugly brightness somewhere near Memphis where it couldn't get in your way, to put the moon in a boxcar, since gone, where it could terrify the cows of Wisconsin as it departed another town. It was during a time of sorrow, a woman wanting milk, a man searching for the warmth of the old days, a time before the anger of the woman in natural dress, a simplicity of palm fronds and absolutes, a whiskey without resentment, following the schooling of the oceans that they, too, came from women. But still, that definite hope of solution that comes with the putting aside of the pilfered codeine, the correct and unattainable translucence of two. That's from Sam's book, A Cafe in Boca. It looks like he's back. We're going to try one more time here. There he is. Maybe not. It looks like we're having massive technical difficulties here. I am a flat-out sprint from the city, after all. That's right. Jason Albright is quoting me from one of my poems. So let's do a song. I was going to do... I was going to do this song in honor of Sam, so I'll do it. I read something that... I have this really great book. I'm sure Jay Fong has it too. Jay, you probably have this book. But if you're interested in the Fresno Poets scene, this book is dynamite. It's called Naming the Lost, the Fresno Poets. And there's just every major player you can think of is in here with essays and interviews, including Sam. And in there, somebody compares, they compare Sam Pereira to a combination of John Berryman, Richard Hugo, Hemingway, and the director David Lynch. Oh, you don't have it? Dude, you got to get this book. It's so good. Christopher Buckley put it together. It's called Naming the Lost, the Fresno Poets. Look at that picture. That's Phil and Peter Everwine and Larry Levis. It's so good. And in that book, they compared Sam to all those writers, and I thought that was a really great... If somebody said something like that about me, I think I would die. I would be able to die. So I thought I'd play my John Berryman song, since I know Sam is a John Berryman guy. I mean, it's hard not to be, because the lineage is Berryman, Levine, and then the rest of us. And the reach that English department in Fresno and those poets has is deep. And naming the lost, that's correct. So I thought I'd play my John Berryman song. This too is off of my first record called High in a Neon Dive. Wake up and I flip through the dream songs, and Henry, he drinks from a bottle that he can't name and he can't swallow. I face up crosses a bridge that he can't name, and I can't follow, no. no phones, Mr. Bones. Women, no phones, Mr. Bones. Wake up and flip through the dream songs, and Henry, he jumps from a bridge that he can't name, and I can't follow, no. No women, no phones, Mr. Bones. Women, no phones, Mr. Bones. Hard on the land now is the sea, and empties the beds and eyes. You can try to slip your wrists, but your hands are tied. Your hands are tied. Your hands are tied. And life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. After all, the sky flashes and the great sea yearns, and we ourselves, we flash and we yearn. And moreover, my mother told me as a boy, ever to confess you're bored means you have no inner resources. I confess now, ladies and gentlemen, I have no inner resources, 'cause I am heavy bored. People bore me, and literature bores me, especially great literature. Henry bores me with his plights and his gripes, as bad as Achilles, who loves people and valiant art, which fucking bores me. And the tranquil hills and gin look like a drag. And somehow a dog has taken himself and his tail considerably away into mountains and sea and sky, leaving behind me wag. And hard on the land now is the sea, and empties the beds and eyes. You can try to slip your wrist, but your hands are tied. Your hands are tied. Your hands are tied. Let's see. I think Sam's back. We're going to give it a try. He nodded his head yes. All right. Let's give it a try, shall we? Hi, Sam.
Hello, Mark.
How are
Can you
you?
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Got a bit of a it's got a bit of an echo, but I think I can fix that. All right, how's that?
It's good. I mean, I finally got back, and what a great song to come back to. Thank you.
Well, I thought of you. Well, we got an echo. Can you hear me? Am I echoing?
You sound fine.
Okay. Well, I'm echoing. All right. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Sam? Where you grew up and where you went to school and how you ended up at
Okay.
Fresno State.
Yeah, I was born in Los Banos. I'm still in Los Banos after a good many detours, some not so great. Um, I came to Fresno State in 1967, and with the intention of becoming a high school English teacher, which I followed through with, and I didn't actually use until like 20, 21, 22 years later. Because once I got to Fresno State, I started getting involved with writing and poetry, and ended up going to the writers' workshop at the University of Iowa once I graduated and got the teaching credential at Fresno. So that's kind of the academic part of it. Um, Along the way, many interesting people, and a lot of it appears in the poems in ways that are, um, let's say, honed a little bit. I mean, they're not exactly verbatim, but they are connected to my life in some way or other. Um, Other poets have made a huge impact on me. The guy you were just singing about made an enormous impact on me.
Yes.
So much so that when I was reading John Berryman, I at some point would have to put it down because everything I started to do and think was John Berryman.
Right.
And he's that powerful, you know.
Yes.
But anyway, that's I'm retired now. I taught for 21 years at a junior high school, and it wasn't as painful as you might think. It was actually pretty good, pretty fun.
There's a great quote. I am echoing, and I apologize to everybody, but there's a great quote from Ed Burns, who co-wrote The Wire, and he was a murder homicide detective in inner city Baltimore, and then he was also a middle school teacher, and he said that was a harder job than being a homicide detective.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be.
Yeah. Would you like to read a couple poems? Because I'm just going to quit talking. I'm echoing.
Okay. Am I still echoing at your end?
No, it's me that's doing it. I'm going to get out of the way and let you read some poems.
I'm gonna skip some because with all the commotion earlier trying to get things worked out, I'm sure we're not going to have the same amount of time we would have. You mentioned Baltimore just a moment ago, and this is a poem from the latest book called True North and Untrue You, and it's dedicated to one of the people I went to school with at Fresno and at Iowa, David St. John. David taught at Johns Hopkins for a number of years, and I would go visit him in Baltimore ever so often, occasionally. And when I would go, there was this little, I don't know what you would call it. It was a hotel, but it was mainly for older people, and they lived there. It was like a rental place, but they rented out rooms to people too. And I would stay there while I visited David. And there was a bar down in the first floor of the hotel, a piano bar. So when I got through one night, going out to dinner and whatever, I'd come back there and I said, well, there's a bar there. What a great idea. So I'd go down, and the first night I went there, there was this guy at the piano, um, typical piano player, brandy snifter on the piano and stuff like that. This poem came out of that. It's called The Grand Pianos of Maryland for David St. John. Once in Baltimore, I walked into a hotel bar containing a piano. A thin man in a suit was playing it. I was drunk, of course, and yes, I asked him if he would play Piano Man. He smiled. He told me I was the first to ever ask for such a fine tune. He was mocking me, but as a drunk, I believed in the power of Billy Joel. Each night while I stayed in that hotel, I managed to stagger in around 8, and as I walked across the floor, James, because we were on a first-name basis by then, James would fire up the 88s like it was really 9 o'clock on a Saturday. I pointed toward him and smiled away from my booth. He continued for the next 2 hours, ending with Piano Concerto No. 2 by Rachmaninoff, prefacing that Billy always believed Sergei had been his grandfather, and this was where he'd gotten all of his natural talent for Piano Man. Ah, man, I believed that too. Then James would take his snifter, give a slight bow, and walk to his car in the rain. It was 11 o'clock on a Saturday, and the regular crowd shuffled home. When I was going to Fresno State, there was a fellow student there in the English department and the creative writing end of things that we all loved dearly. Big bear of a guy, and he passed away a couple of years ago. His name was Lance Patigian, and ever so often I think about Lance, and usually there's a scenario involved in that thought. This is called Lessons Out of School for Lance Patigian. Write about something you know. So I wrote about a woman in a black dress, and in that invention I flourished. She had the ankles of an 18-year-old, and everyone was smiling. The talk shows landed on my porch. It was back when the long mics were in vogue, and men wore the hell out of spicy colognes. There was no need to ask a man twice, "Did you love her?" "Well, did you?" And then stand there in that portico of fog, waiting for a reply. I told this story to an old friend once. He nodded and pulled 2 expensive cigars from inside his jacket pocket. He handed one to me and said, "You know, Sam, there's no shame in not knowing as long as you cop to it. For example," he said, "I'll be gone tomorrow, and you'll want to tell them it was exactly as the press reported." a freight train dragging my Cadillac, screaming down the tracks. Tell them that. Christ, they'll think they've been to church. The cigars went down that day, as all of you might expect. I'll always remember the sanity in the blue smoke at 4 in the afternoon. Two men bringing up the honest scent and maddening truth of our fictions. And Mark, if you want to take over.
I'm back. I'm going to try something that Melanie suggested. So when I'm talking, I'm going to mute your mic, and I think that might help with the echo, and it's working. So I'll put you back on when it's time for you. But it is working, so we're going to kind of try to play it like that. There's a couple things I want to say. That was brilliant, and I'm so happy you're here, and I'm so happy you're reading. That took me back, listening to you read, and we talked about this briefly, to being at the Fresno Art Museum as a boy and listening to poets read, and it was such a huge part of my life. And I just felt I felt like I was that kid again in the dark, listening to the poets. I put you back on because I don't know what you say to that, but that's how I felt when I was.
Yeah, I remember those times too. It was a great place.
It was. That's the only time I ever got starstruck. I got a chance to. I showed up to hear Phil Levine read once, and I had one of his books. And I never get people to sign things or to do anything like that, but I wanted Phil to sign my book. And I had all these things I was going to say to him, but then he's so intimidating, and I got to the front of the line, and I just handed him my book, and I stood there, and I didn't say one thing, and then I walked away.
Yeah. I did that in Iowa once. I don't know. Do you know the poet James Tate?
I don't.
Yeah, he was reading there, and it was a big deal. I mean, there was no room anywhere. They were standing in the aisles, and I had a couple of his books, and I was really, fond of his poems. So I went up, and I thought, I'll get a nice little personalized note on the books. He looked at me, and I handed him the 3 books, and in each one he wrote, James Tate. And somehow I was okay with that.
Right.
But
there's a couple things I wanted to say to you. I muted you real quick. There's a guy named Hector Martinez who taught. I took him for a creative writing course in San Diego, and he was taught by David St. John. Do you know that gentleman?
I do not know.
Mm-hmm. But he the reach of the Fresno poets is so deep, and he when he found out I was from Fresno, he was blown away because he was a David St. John pupil, and he was a Fresno poet disciple also. And it's just amazing the reach you guys have in so many of our lives. It just goes really deep, and I can't, it's hard to describe.
Am I on?
Yeah.
When we all went there, it was about there was a crew of people that had been in the writing department before David and I. But we were at the sort of beginnings of things. And I know, speaking for me, I walked into that not having a clue of what was going to happen. I mean, those were different times, too. It was right in the middle of the Vietnam thing. And it changed my life completely, so much so that it's still a huge part of my life.
Yeah, I read something you wrote, and it said when you left Los Banos High, where you graduated from, you said some people were going to Vietnam, and you went down Freeway 99 to Fresno, where you spent the next 5 years of your life. And you said it was, and here's how you described Fresno. You called it a tough yet open city that would shape the rest of your life in a way you hadn't expected.
It's all true.
Yeah. What Why was Fresno? I mean, I know why Fresno's. I know why Fresno's tough, but what do you mean when you say that tough and open?
Well, when I went to Fresno, I was about as naive as you could be. I mean, I came from a small town. I mean, I thought I knew everything, but I really didn't know much of anything. So to me, Fresno was an enormous place, and it wasn't as big as it is now. It was like 150,000 people, I think, back then.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was awestruck by the entire thing.
Mm.
That combined with this new freedom to do things, you know, you could do stuff that you could never do in Los Banos,
Right.
at least then.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was eye opening.
There's another thing I want to read that's a quote of yours, and this was when you were talking about your book, Bad Angels, and you described the book as addressing this. You said, darkness remains mysterious. Light is wonderful, but you only get there through darkness first. It is the very nature of why I write.
Yeah, I mean, for what that's worth, almost anything that I write that I feel like I've done a decent job on has a dark side to it. There's occasionally a little bit of humor in there just to sort of save me sometimes, but it's my nature. It's my nature to be that way, and you know, there's a lot of people delving into that. It's not unique to me,
Mm.
but I'm, how can I put it? I'm the happiest in my writing when it's dismal.
I can relate to that. I sometimes will have, when I'm performing, I think it's why I joke so much in between, because if it was just the songs, people would think I'm a miserable, dark person, and I want them to know that I'm actually pretty happy, and I'm happiest when I'm dealing with those subjects. I can totally relate.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you like to read a couple more poems?
Sure.
I would love that. I'm sure everybody else would too.
Thank you. Um, we'll need a little bit of explanation also. It's called Advice, and it's dedicated to a man named Michael Cudahy. Uh, I'll tell you a little bit about Michael Cudahy. If you, I know Mark has read the part that I wrote about in Naming the Lost. There's a segment in there that talks about being in one of Phil's classes, and he had just been to Arizona for a reading, I guess, and he came back and he's starting his class, and we're just kind of sitting around waiting for the class to begin. And he looks over at me and says, "Hey, I saw your publisher today." He says, "Hi." And everybody kind of looked at me, and what it was Michael Cudahy had just started a magazine called Ironwood, and he had taken a couple of poems of mine, didn't know me, didn't know anything about me, and it was a great magazine. Uh, it's got me in there with some enormously well-known people, and Phil was just having a little bit of fun with me, but he was also letting everybody know that, you know, this kid from Las Banas had gotten a publication in a magazine that was going to be fairly important, and I never forgot that, and I was always grateful to Phil for that and to Michael Cudahy for taking the work. This is a poem that deals with a different moment. I ended up in Iowa City, and it took me a long time to find people there to relate to, except for David and Larry, who, you know, I already knew. And I got really sort of depressed one night, and I called Michael on the phone. I had talked to him a couple of times. We really didn't know each other that well, except for the magazine. And Michael was worried about me going to Iowa City, getting sort of churned up by the creative writing machine, if you will. And that's what this poem is about, called Advice from Michael Cudahy. And then there was that time I called him from a corner out in the snow to say I'd taken a liking to the Midwest. In fact, there seemed a certain elegance to the slush of the everyday. You know, the hardware stores appeared authentic. I told him, and I knew hardware stores. We laughed, and this was in the time of wires and operators who'd ask for dimes, which didn't seem political, but was. When I was holding the last of the world's dimes in my right hand, we talked of my being knee-deep in what I'd been calling a love affair, and how it had taken on an amber hue, the kind required for a metaphor to stick. And then how the decay took hold. But I digress. The bottom line, he took a moment and coughed and said, talking now about the poems, not love, be careful out there. Don't forget your soul and watch the booze. We've talked about this small town that I've lived in for a large part of my life. There was a little store. The guy had a shoe shine shop and repaired shoes, and he was there for years, long after I was out of school. But when I was in school, we would go by Nick's shoe shine shop, and he sold, candy and jerky and things like that. This is called Outside Nick's Shoe Shine, 1960, which made me about 11 years old, I guess. When I walked into Nick the Shine's to buy the best beef jerky in town, I realized it was the beginning of the end of my childhood. How the meat factories of America could take the dead and add a little salt and garlic, then suddenly turn young boys into the barbarians they were destined to be. Back into the small town streets, the same ones I would tarnish in just a handful more of years. I speculated and I purported to understand life in all its heat. I told myself I'd personally butchered the life out of that beef. Me, an 11-year-old altar boy, unaware the woman he would marry was 36 years away from him, asleep in a Detroit bed, in love with Smokey Robinson, I'd guessed. When that all changed, I rubbed a little jerky over my scars, and as Mama Cass wasn't ready yet to sing, I pretend to pray. Okay, Mark.
That was brilliant. I loved it. I could hear my wife laughing in the other room, and I too was laughing, and so great. I wanted to say something. I love your narrative style, the way you write, and to me it is such a Central Valley vibe. But you said something in one of the interviews in Naming the Lost. You talked about how you wanted your poems to be accessible and easy to understand. I'm paraphrasing. I hope I'm not making a mess of it, and you didn't see the point of making things obscure or hard to or hard to understand, and you felt like you didn't have time for that. I love that because I agree, and I think the misconception in poetry is that it could mean anything to anybody, when I would say it's much more specific than that.
Yeah, one of the main points to doing it is to communicate. And if you're not doing that, you're missing a large part of it.
Yeah. I heard from Dwayne Rail a great Mark Strand story, and you tell me if this is true. But Mark Strand used to wear cowboy boots all the time, and he'd put them up on the he'd put them up on the desk. And somebody asked him, Mr. Strand. I'm just telling this because I don't know if it's true or not, and frankly, I don't care if it's true or not. But I just love the story. They asked him, Mr. Strand, or why do you always wear cowboy boots? And Mark Strand said, so I can be as tall as I can possibly be.
Actually, that sounds like something he'd say. Yeah.
What was it like being with Mark, Mr. Strand?
I at Iowa as a teacher. He was there for I think a year when I happened to be there. And the one thing I remember about him, well, many things, but the one thing that stands out is a silly story too. I mean, he I'd go into his office to, in this case, I think it had to do with an MFA thesis or something, and his office he had inherited from somebody else, and the woman that had the office had painted the walls black, all black. So Mark used it as a blackboard, and he would write notes on it the entire time. He was a not a hard guy to get to know, and he had a great sense of humor, but it was tough to break through that. And he wasn't there long enough for me to really know him that well. I actually saw Mark Strand read in Fresno, like the second year I had been to Fresno, because Phil used to bring everybody into Fresno to read.
Right. I remember being deeply affected. Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, I just wondered how we're doing on time.
Oh, we're good. We're okay as long as you don't have anywhere to go. It's my show, so I can do what I want. And since we had trouble up front, I don't see any reason to hurry. I still want to hear you read a couple more poems, and I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is this. So you mentioned, was it when you got to Fresno State that you realized you wanted to write poetry, or when did you first realize you wanted to write poetry?
Actually, I started to seriously do it when I was like 17. So it was a little before, but I knew nothing about it. I mean, that came with Fresno, and it didn't really come in the first year I was at Fresno. I was set on the teaching gig thing, and as I got more and more into the literature and into the writing and stuff, like I was going to have a history minor, and that went by the wayside the second year because I wanted to devote all the time to writing and reading as many books as I could. Something my parents did not understand, but that's what I had to do.
There was an interesting thing I read where you talked about your dad kind of teasing you a little bit about it. My dad would do that too. He would tease me about my interest in books and wanting to write. He would call me the man of letters, and he would say it mockingly.
Yeah. My dad, I mean, he was so wrapped up in work 24/7 that he didn't really understand it. But when the first book came out and I put it in his hands, then he got it. He opened the book, and he could see the paper and the quality of the paper and stuff. And I swear to this day, I could see him smile, which he didn't do all that often, you know. So
Mhm.
I think I won him over at the end.
Sure. I want to ask you this really kind of vague and shitty question, but it's it's like, what is it? Why poetry? Why? What is it about poetry that drew you to it? I mean, I can kind of answer it for myself, but it's different for me because I consider myself an outlier or an outsider to the academic world. But I mean, or you know, and I've never published anything. There's that too. So you know, but why poetry? Like, what instead of fiction or instead of historical books?
Well, poetry is the only thing that, this is going to sound sort of snotty, but I mean, it's the only kind of writing that ever made me feel anything, whether I was reading it or writing it. I respect the people that use the other genres. My wife is a fiction writer.
Mm.
You know, I just, it's the only thing that has ever mattered to me, and it just gets all my attention whenever I. In fact, now that I'm retired, it gets way more of my attention because I've got the time.
Yeah. You're so prolific too. All the poems that you post online are. I read that you a while back you would get up and write every day at like 5 in the morning. Do you still do that?
It's partly true. I usually get up about 3.
Are you writing a poem a day like you were then?
Yeah, yeah, and probably not a great thing to be sharing them, but I don't know how not to. I mean, it's you know, it's what I do.
Mark Strand might look down upon it, but I think it's really cool.
Well, it makes publishing in journals and stuff a little bit more difficult because, believe it or not, most of them consider putting something on Facebook publication. I
Oh,
don't, and I keep it up there for like a day. But you know, that's another story for another time. I mean, I'm not going to change what I do now.
mhm. Would you read a couple more poems? Do you have time for that? Do you have a couple on deck there? I would like to hear a couple more before we pull the plug on this.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Assignment.
Hey, Sam, can you
Yeah.
start over? Because I had you muted. I'm an idiot. Try again.
Okay. This next one is called Today's Assignment, and it's more recent, and there's um, nothing directly said here about Ukraine and the stuff that's going on over there, but it's in the background, and if you're paying attention closely enough, you'll get that. It's about me going back to my junior high classroom after I'd retired. Today's assignment. In solidarity with the people now under attack, I wandered back over to the little school on the corner of Winchester Boulevard and Whitman Road. I hadn't taught there in several years, and I was truly enjoying being retired, but I had no choice. The doors to the school were wide open. No one seemed to be lurking inside. My old room was still there, all the little laptops missing keys, just like before. Pastry wrappers from the corner store piled up and then swirling over the carpet, since the breeze had snuck in through the broken windows. Occasionally, there'd be the random cockroach longing for the preemptive sugar high. The students had left weeks ago, but like I said before, in solidarity with the people, students being people, I began speaking to the air briefly. Forget about the construction of your pristine topic sentences today. Start with a war, any war. Aim your words directly north at what seems to be the heart of whomever is claiming to be a bear in bear's clothing today. And the one I'll end with, I guess, is called Love in Europe. It mentions a singer named Aznavour, Charles Aznavour, who some of you may not know, some of you may. He was kind of a very big deal in France and in the United States and in the world during the time of Edith Piaf and people like that. Very romantic singer. So he's in this poem because I needed a romantic singer. Love in Europe. Remember that time I gave you nothing? How inspiring it was watching you cry. Well, this is a note asking forgiveness. As the rain looks on, the staunchest overseer embellishing the pain like a sugar glaze on a lemon cake. The French countryside, a lapsed prayer from our 40s, and yet siphoning the past seems a calling, doesn't it? I mean, remember that time you gave me your world and I lapped it up like Aznavour with cigarette smelling of lust, 2-day-old cologne, and the flavor of deep night sin. And that's it, sir.
Lovely. Thank you, Sam.
And thank anybody who's put up with this.
Oh no, I hope, I want to ask you, maybe you'll come back again.
Sure.
Yeah. So when I envisioned doing this live stream, this is what I envisioned, was having guys like you and gals come on and read their poetry, play songs. And so this is the maiden voyage of a live guest. And we made it we made it through.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah. I just want to thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sam Pereira. Sorry, say that again.
No, just saying thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Sam. And if you'll stay on the line, I'm gonna exit you, but don't leave because I want to talk to you. Thank you so much, Sam. Love you.
Love you.
That was Sam. Thank you, Joanne. Lovely. Thanks for tuning in, all of you that tuned in. Thanks for putting up with us. And you know, it's live, and we're figuring it out on the fly. But I thought it went really great, and I want to just thank again Sam for taking me back and reading. And I was telling Melanie, I felt like a 22-year-old kid sitting in the dark at the art museum where they would do poetry readings in Fresno, and it was really great. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Looks like we got Rebecca here. Thanks for tuning in, Rebecca. Thank you all for tuning in and for sticking with us and for hanging around and listening. Next week, I believe I am going to have another guest from the Central Valley. So stay tuned for that. And thanks for tuning in. And thanks again. Thank you, Joanne. And thanks again, Sam, so much. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Oh, and if you're in New Jersey, Saturday night, I'm playing in Cedar Grove, New Jersey at the Cedar Beans Coffee Joint. with AJ Scaff. So come on out to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Let's see. What does Melanie say? Check. A special night. Absolutely. Really was. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Love you. Bye.